What is up everybody, Scratch coming up with another Raid Shadow Legends video. In this video we're gonna talk about top 20 best epic champions for clan boss in the entire game. In what champions is worth it to invest your resources when we're talking about clan boss, and of course in what sort of teams they are working the best. Now we're not gonna rank them number 1, 2, 3, 4 because everything is situational, how I'm always telling you, but we're gonna start talking about them by going through factions, right? So it's no secret, right? We're talking about epic champions, clan boss. There's definitely a number 1 epic champion for clan boss, and that champion, everybody knows it, but we're gonna talk about that in a second as well, is an amazing champion, right? Because he's good everywhere in the game, but we're gonna get to that champion in a second. Now, starting in with Bannerlords. Right here, guys, we do have some champions. Like, we're not gonna talk about every single epic that you might be able to use in a clan boss. You might have him on your account, but somebody else doesn't, and because you have him, you're gonna use him on your own account and say is amazing. We're literally gonna talk about the top 20 best epic champions all around for clan boss, right? So starting with Bannerlords, how I said, sorry we took a bit longer than we thought. We do have Warcaster, right? So he's a void epic support champion, guys. He is good just because of this skill right here. Places a block damage buff on all allies for 1 turn. That's on a 4-turn cooldown fully booked. He has pretty good base stats. He deals decent amount of damage, nothing too crazy. He has a very good aura as well. Increases void ally crit rate in all battles by 23%. So it can help your void champions to get a bit of extra crit rate just from his aura. How I said, he is used for unkillable teams, right? So there are tons and tons of different unkillable teams to use out there. You can run double Warcaster. You can run Warcaster with Renegade Seeker 2-to-1 ratio like the War Crusher. There are quite a few teams that you can run with him. I've made a double Warcaster with Bushi, for example. Now, Bushi doesn't really work as intended anymore, or at least I don't think it works as good with him in the team. But you can run a Torture Helm to get a stun, revive. So those are videos you'll be finding in my Clan Boss playlist, guys. Feel free to check that out if you are interested. Regarding a lot of these champions, you will be finding videos on them and different comps, different teams. But mainly, that's what matters on Warcaster, right? His A1 has a 50% chance to steal 2 random buffs. Not really gonna help us when we're talking about unkillable team. And A2 block buffs. He's amazing for faction wars as well, but today we're gonna kind of focus towards clan boss rather than all around faction wars campaign, damage dealers and stuff like that, right? So the first champion is Warcaster, guys. Amazing, amazing epic champion for unkillable teams. Not many left in this particular faction for clan boss all around, guys. Like, rather than just to bring us one thing, we want them to actually be good for clan boss, right? To be like designed in that way, you know, for clan boss, you know. Moving over to the high elves as well, pretty much the same situation here. We don't have a ton of epic champions that can be used all around in clan boss. Yes, you can make some of them work around different champions, that they're dependable of different champions, but we're kind of focusing on the best of the best. So we do have Tyrell right here, guys. Amazing champion, defensive based epic, magic affinity. He is just great all around. Like, great base stats. Attack down on the A1 double hit here. So attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 50% chance of placing a 50% decrease attack debuff for 2 turns. Damage inflicted is proportional to defense. So defense-based champion, how I said. And here, on a 3-turn cooldown fully booked, we have an AoE decreased defense debuff for 2 turns. Great for high defense teams, rather than just unkillable. You have attack down, you have defense down. So that makes him a very solid champion. He deals tons of damage as well. He hits super hard with the A1, A2, A3. A3 is not really gonna help us for clan boss, but this skill right here, it hits for 150k to 200k, depending how good are the stats on your champion. And then we have his aura, increases ally defense in all battles by 25%. That makes him good all around in the entire game. And let's just say you are running unkillable teams, you don't have a second poisoner, you don't have a resin or a different champion for defense down. He can be used in there as well, just for that defense down and extra damage. You can run him, for example, on a toxic set and make him do all the rest of the debuffs as well. and add damage to the team as well. Awesome, awesome champion. Moving over to the next faction, guys, we have the Sacred Order. Now, right here, there are a few champions that can run in some particular teams, like Phoenix is amazing for damage, but it's just that. So he's gonna run only on unkillable teams for damage. I feel like he kind of fits a different sort of profile. We do have Eotar in here, attack force champion, deals a ton of damage, tons of poisons. So if you run him with a Painkeeper on an unkillable team, a budget team, he's an amazing champion. So we have the A1, attacks one enemy 2 times, has a 25% chance of stealing one random buff from the target. Again, this is not really gonna help us on unkillable teams, but it does have a chance to steal the attack up from the clan boss if we run him on a normal team, a high defense team. Then we have the A2, Holy Flame, attacks 4 times at random. Each hit places a 5% poison debuff for 2 turns. That's on a 3-turn cooldown. Awesome, awesome skill to have 4 poisons for 2-turn cooldowns straight off the back from here, guys. Then we have the A3, attacks 1 enemy, places a block cooldown skills debuff for 2 turns. This is not great for clan boss right here. It doesn't deal tons of damage, but if you run him with the ally attack, a counter attack team, you can put him on a Giant Slayer and make the benefit of having a higher damage from here. If you run him with Painkeeper on the budget and killable team, definitely put him on Giant Slayer because he's gonna get to use the A2 so often that Giant Slayer is gonna become a huge source of damage for him. Then we have the Aura, pretty good aura as well, increases ally attack in all battles by 21%, so that's pretty awesome as well for unkillable with the aura. You might want to use a defense aura if you run him on a different team rather than unkillable, but his base defense is not the best for those teams. He has pretty good attack, 1.5k, but that was Eotar. Moving over to the next champion from here is a very unique champion, very specific when we're talking about teams, but he helps our team to go on a 2-to-1 ratio. And that champion is Deacon Armstrong. Support champion, spirit affinity. What makes him so unique? We have the A3 on him on a 3-turn cooldown fully booked, fills the turn meter of all allies by 15% and grants an extra turn. We don't really care about decrease the turn meter because that doesn't work on clan boss, but boosting the turn meter of all the team and granting an extra turn, which kind of brings this on a 2-turn cooldown, that's what allows the team to go on a 2-to-1 ratio. So basically, he makes all the team alone to go on a 2-to-1 ratio, right? Then we have his aura, increases ally speed in all battles by 19%. That allows me to lower the speed requirements on all my team and make them go on a 2-to-1 ratio without having insane amount of speeds, because his turn meter boost is only by 15%, so it's not the same as Seeker's. But then we have the A1, attacks 1 enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 50% chance to place a leech debuff for 2 turns. Damage based on attack, his base stats are pretty good, right? But I'm not sure how hard he is because I haven't really tried the champion myself. But having Leech on the A1, guys, and for example, you're not running a counter-attack champion, you might not have the best gear for your champions to deal tons of damage, heal back up, and counter-attack from Masteries. So he comes in play and allows, with this Leech debuff, for your team to heal up from the War Master procs and counter-attack from Masteries more often. Then we have the A2, Sweeping Retribution on a 3-turn cooldown fully booked. AoE decreased defense, right? So we have defense down on a 3-turn cooldown from here as well. On a 2-to-1 ratio with him, you'll be keeping defense down every single time, right? Awesome, awesome champion. Deacon Armstrong for you guys right here. Then we do have another champion in the Sacred Order, amazing for clan boss, super powerful champion, and that's Godseeker Aniri. Deals tons of damage. She is a very unique champion as well in her own way. Defense-based champion, Void Affinity, insane base stats, super good defense, decent speed, decent amount of HP. Looking over at the A1, attacks 1 enemy, heals the ally with the lowest HP by 5% of their max HP. So the heal itself is not a huge heal, right? But it's still something good. Then we have the A2, attacks all enemies, and that's on a 3-turn cooldown, heals all allies by 15% of their max HP, then decreases the durations of all buffs on all enemies by 1 turn, and increases the duration of all buffs on all allies by 1 turn. Basically, unlimited counterattack, unlimited defense up, unlimited ally protection, unlimited speed buff. You can run her on an endless buff team, right? So she can make a Krisk, for example, to go on a 2-to-1 ratio. She can make an Apothecary in the team to take all your team on a 2-to-1 ratio. That's why she's so unique. We only have another couple of champions that do this. So because of it, she is super, super amazing. Then we have the A3, Rise of Glory. On a 4-turn cooldown, revives a dead ally with 50% HP, then fills the turn meter by 50% and resets the cooldowns on all their skills. Super, super powerful skill as well to decrease the cooldowns of all the skills as well. You can have the stun target being revived by this if you make her go on a 4-to-3 ratio. The passive, this is on a 4-turn cooldown as well, fully booked. Increases the amount of healing allies receives by 10%. And if an ally is about to get killed by a fatal hit, preempts that hit and instantly places a revive on that buff on them for 1 turn before the damage is taken. So basically they're gonna get insta revive back. Super, super powerful champion. She did tons of damage as well. She hit super hard. But that was all for this faction, guys. Moving over to Barbarians, right? We do have a few epic champions here that are great now. Skytouch Shaman. She's not great for clan boss because of her passive, guys. She's gonna throw everything out of sync. We do have a couple of other champions that are tied to only one particular team. So because of it, we're not gonna talk about them. But we have probably one of my favorite epic champions in the entire game. And the reason for it is just because he brings so much to the game. And that's Farakin the Fat. Ally attack, poisons, defense down, HP burn, increased crit rate, increased crit damage. My god, he brings everything in one kit. Attack champion, spirit affinity. We have the A1. We have a 50% chance to land a defense down for 2 turns. We have the A2, attacks one enemy, has a 100% chance fully booked of landing a HP burn debuff and 5% poisons debuff for 2 turns. That's on a 3-turn cooldown. Amazing, amazing so far. But then, if that was not enough, we have the A3 on a 4-turn cooldown fully booked. Places a 30% increased crit rate buff and a 30% increased crit damage buff on all allies except this champion for 3 turns. Then all allies except this champion will attack one target enemy. So ally attack, buffs for 3 turns. He's just amazing, guys. Like, so much in his kit, honestly. He works amazing for unkillable teams, amazing for high defense teams. Now, if we'll be to pick over him and Krela, for example, in some of the teams, depending by what teams, right? If I'm running only attack-based champions, I would go probably with Krela as long as I would have defense down from some other champion, just because attack up makes way more than increase crit damage, right? But having poisons, HP burn, defense down, ally attack and the buffs just makes him amazing. Pretty good base stats. He doesn't have very high attack. He has good speed, good defense. HP not the best overall, but not too bad either. You can take him to 30k without a problem. His passive deflects 20% of all incoming damage this champion receives onto all allies. This damage will be spread equally across all allies. So kind of helps to keep him alive a bit longer if you run him on a high defense team. Is actually super great idea with him. Moving over to the next champions, the next faction, guys, we have the Ogrin tribe. So here again we have quite a few champions in here, right? We're gonna start of course with Skull Crusher, the only counter-attack champion in the game that's epic rarity, right? Force affinity, defense-based champion. His A1 doesn't really do much for clan boss. He can deal a pretty good amount of damage as well. Attacks one enemy, places 50% heal reduction debuff if the target's defense is lower than this champion. Now, the very good part about this champion, guys, is the low amount of books he requires. You might be lucky and literally landing the one book that matters on his A2 and call it a day. That's like honestly the luckiest thing ever. Places a 50% ally protection buff on all allies except this champion for 2 turns. Places a counterattack buff on all allies except this champion for 2 turns. Places an unkillable buff on this champion for 1 turn. Amazing overall for any sort of team. Unkillable, high defense teams, whatever team you want to run out there, he can have a spot in it. You can run him on a double ally protection team, single ally protection team because he's already bringing that with counter attack. You can run him as a stun target with this unkillable buff that he procs on him. Use the ally attack for a 1 AoE as well. Just overall amazing champion. Pretty good base stats as well. He doesn't have the biggest amount of defense here, but decent enough to make it work. And his passive Unshakable decreases the duration of all debuffs on this champion by 1 turn at the start of each turn. So a lot of you guys are making the mistake here thinking that if the clan boss stuns him, the stun disappears, but that doesn't mean that the cooldown of this skill is gonna get decreased by 1 turn just because he gets the turn. Unfortunately, it's not the way it works, so if I use this right now and then the boss stuns me, I'm still taking my turn. That doesn't mean that this cooldown is gonna get decreased by 1 turn just because I remove the stun. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. So it's still gonna be on a 3-turn cooldown. His aura, not good for clan boss at all, but this is a very, very unique skill. 3 champions in the entire game that have counter attack. I really, really wish they would make more so everyone can get one. Just Plarium, make a fusion, a counter attack champion, just give him counter attack, don't give him nothing else on the kit, and you'll make people happy. Please, just do it. So that was Skull Crusher. The next one we have on this list, guys, is with no hesitation, no doubts, one of the best poisoner in the entire game, and that's Occult Brawler. He hits pretty good, tons of damage, and tons of poisons. You can run him on every sort of team, unkillable, high defense team. He doesn't have the highest base defense, but he has pretty good amount of HP, decent amount of attack. He's a HP based champion, Spirit Affinity as well. We have the A1, attacks one enemy, has a 60% chance fully booked of placing a 5% poison debuff for 2 turns. Amazing with counter attack, amazing with ally attack because of this A1 right here. You want him to use it as much as possible. A2, not the best for a clan boss. This skill hits pretty hard, is a wall of text. We're not gonna go over it because it doesn't really relate to clan boss too much, honestly. But he can deal pretty good damage with this as well. And the passive, guys, places a 2.5 poison debuff on this champion for 4 turns at the start of each turn. Has a 70% chance of placing a 5% poison debuff on a random enemy for 4 turns at the start of each turn. The more turns he gets, the more this passive is gonna come in play, the more poisons he's gonna place. You can increase this from Masteries with Sniper and Master Hexer as well. Same for the A1, but this is Occult Brawler, guys, how I said. Great all around, no matter what sort of team you're planning to use him with. Then we have Grush the Mangler. You get this champion for free from the daily login rewards. Defense based champion, Spirit Affinity as well. Crazy good base stats as well. High defense, good amount of HP. Not the highest speed, but pretty good as well. Now this champion hits super hard. We have the A1, attacks one enemy, has a 75% chance of placing a leech debuff on the target for 2 turns before attacking. So that means if he's low on the HP, you're not running your team on lifesteal because that's why you're running leech in the team, right? He's gonna land the leech and then he's gonna hit, so that's gonna make him heal as well, which is pretty good. Then leech is important, guys, is a huge thing, if especially early on mid game, if you don't have an amazing lifesteal gear. These sort of champions with leech can help you a lot in your team. And how I said, he hits hard as well. Now we have this skill right here. This is on a 4-turn cooldown, fully booked, attacks all enemies, has a 60% chance of placing a 50% decrease attack debuff or a 30% decrease crit damage debuff for 2 turns. So if you make him to go on a 4-to-3 ratio, he's gonna be reliable for attack down and leech as well, because he's gonna get even more turns. So literally, you don't need anything else than him in your team. Of course, he can get resisted, that can happen, but that can happen to any other champion. Then the A3, on a 4-turn cooldown, fully booked, attacks all enemies, places a 15% continuous heal buff on all allies for 2 turns, places an additional 7.5 continuous heal buff on all allies for 1 turn if at least one enemy is hit with a critical hit. So this skill right here is an extra heal on top of the leech, a great addition to his kit. His aura increases ally defense, infection, crit, so nothing related to clan boss. Now, moving over to the next champion, guys. So this is not part of the 20 because this is the bonus one. So this is the 21st. And the reason is the 21st is because he's the first, the best, the #1 epic champion in the entire game for clan boss. Why? Because he's just game changer for every single account. And that's Maniter. Void Affinity, HP based champion. Extremely unique, extremely powerful. How I said, simply the best for clan boss. A1 attacks one enemy, places a 50% decrease attack debuff on all enemies if this attack is critical. You can't really rely on him for attack down just because he's on a 1-turn cooldown, right? Unless you're running him with a counter attack. But you don't really want to rely on him for attack down. A2 hits super hard, so these two skills, they actually deal a ton of damage. His damage is based on attack, so the more attack you get on him, how I said, if you have an attack up from a Krella, he's gonna deal way more damage than just with increased crit damage. But what makes him so amazing is this skill right here. On a 5-turn cooldown fully booked, this champion receives damage, then places an unkillable buff and a block debuffs buff on all allies for 2 turns. Damage received is equal to 5% max HP for each alive ally. So that was Maniter, guys, the #1 epic champion in the entire game. And that's not just my opinion, probably everybody's opinion. Now, moving over to the next faction, guys. We have the Lizardmen. Now here, again, they are a couple of champions. I'm only keen of one because I feel like Steel Skull is better than him. So we're only gonna talk about Jarek from this faction, even though Aox is not the worst choice if you don't have a better one, but he's not amazing either. Jarek, on the other hand, very unique as well for an epic champion and a very powerful kit as well. So he's a HP based champion, magic affinity, pretty good base stats, decent amount of defense, huge amount of HP. Of course, he's a HP based champion, but starting over with the A1, we have a 50% chance to place a 50% decrease attack debuff for 2 turns. A2 places a 50% ally protection and a 60% increased defense buff on all allies for 2 turns. That's on a 4-turn cooldown, so you really want to make him go on a 4-to-3 ratio for the best results with him. Of course, I wouldn't use him on an unkillable team. He's literally for high defense teams, right? His passive places a 15% continuous heal buff on all allies for 1 turn whenever an ally loses 20% of their max HP in 1 hit. So decent passive, super good A2 right here, but how I said, you gotta make him on a 4-to-3 ratio if you wanna get the best results out of him. Decent stats as well, used mainly for attack down and of course, how I said, the A2. Now, moving over to the next champion, we're gonna jump straight to the Skinwalker faction here, guys, and we're gonna talk about a couple of champions from here. Super good, pretty unique. So how I said, Aox is good, but then Steel Skull kind of deserves a better spot than him. So we're not gonna put Aox on the list here. We're gonna go with Steel Skull just because he has a more powerful kit. Support champion, Spirit Affinity, pretty good base stats, one of the highest speeds in the entire game. His defense is not the craziest considering that he's a support based champion, and the problem with him is his AI, right? But once they're gonna fix the AI, we're gonna have control on what sort of things the champions are gonna use, what skills, he's gonna become even more powerful. So we have the A1, attacks one enemy 2 times, has a 35% chance of placing a 5% poison debuff for 2 turns. The A2 removes all debuffs from a target ally, then heals them by 40% of the HP, and that's on a 3-turn cooldown fully booked. Now this right here, it doesn't get used on auto properly, so we cannot count on the cleans with him. We have the A3 on a 4-turn cooldown fully booked, places a 60% increased defense buff on all allies for 2 turns, heals all allies by 20% of their max HP. So you want to have him to go on a 4-to-3 ratio for this skill, but then it's all about luck if you're not booking this right here, okay? So if you're booking this, you gotta make him go on a normal ratio, 3-to-3, and make use only of this right here, just because you want to have the cleans maybe. Or depending by what other champions you have in your team, you might have a different cleanser, you might have a different champion for defense up, but it's kind of dependable of that, right? But that was Steel Skull right here. The next one on the list, of course, is Maratatouille, Fane, Attack Champion, Spirit Affinity. I feel like we've been talking about so many Spirit Affinity champions, right? I was honestly definitely expecting to have more magic champions because they're kind of dominant in the game. But we have the A1, attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 50% chance of stealing 5% of the target's turn meter. Not important for clan boss. The A2 attacks one enemy, has a 100% chance of placing 2 5% poison debuffs and a 50% decrease attack debuff for 2 turns. That's on a 3-turn cooldown. Reliable for attack down as long as that 3% chance doesn't come in play to screw over all our team. 2 poisons, pretty good. But then we have the A3 on a 4-turn cooldown, fully booked, attacks one enemy 3 times. The first hit has a 100% chance of placing a defense down for 3 turns. The second hit has a 100% chance of placing a 25% weaken for 3 turns. The third hit heals this champion by 4% of her max HP for every debuff on the target. The more debuffs on the boss, the more HP you're gonna get back with Fane. Now, the only problem with her is she's amazing for bad hitters, amazing for unkillable, that especially go on a 2-to-1 ratio. Teams with Painkeeper, with Renegade, like the budget unkillable. She's not that great for high defense teams. Her base defense is extremely low. Her HP is pretty low as well. Her attack is actually huge. She doesn't hit extremely hard with her skills, but she can definitely bring up a ton of damage to your team. So that was Fane right here, ladies and gentlemen. Moving over to the next faction, guys, we have the Orcs right here. We have a very unique champion here as well. Sandless Survivor, defense-based champion, Spirit Affinity again. We have the A1 right here, attacks one enemy 2 times, has a 30% chance of placing Provoke. Heals this champion by 15% of the damage inflicted if the champion is under any debuff. So she gets a bit of a heal from here. Provoke doesn't matter on the clan boss, but she deals a decent amount of damage as well. We have the A2, Endless Sands on a 3-turn cooldown, fully booked, attacks all enemies, decreases the duration of all enemy buffs by 1 turn, increases the duration of all ally buffs by 1 turn. How I said, unique, she's similar with Chris, with Godseeker Aniri. So because of it, you are able to run endless buff sort of teams, to say like this, 2-to-1 ratio teams with increased speed buffs. Amazing champion because of it. Insane base stats, pretty good amount of defense, decent speed, good amount of HP, but almost 1.4k defense, right? The passive as well is very good. Bone Survivor on a 4-turn cooldown, fully booked, places a 50% increased ally protection buff on all allies for 2 turns when an ally's HP drops below 50%. Also places a block damage buff on this champion for 1 turn. You can kind of run her on a double ally protection team, but only when the other ally gets low on the HP. The only thing with it is kind of you want to make her go on a 4-to-3 ratio for this passive to be on a 3-turn cooldown. That's kind of gonna desync, so it's a bit problematic here, but she's mainly amazing for the A2. We do have the aura, increases ally defense in all battles by 25%. So again, a very powerful epic champion right here. Sandless Survivor. I used to run her on a couple of different teams actually. Then moving over to the next faction. In the Demon Spawn, really, we don't have insane champions to bring more to one thing to the clan boss. We do have Padma, don't get me wrong, she's pretty nice, but she's only attack down. She needs full crit rate. Pretty hard for a lot of you guys to build like that, so because of it, I'm not gonna put her on the list. Padma, she's not bad for attack down, but that's it. Literally attack down and nothing else. I feel like she got the power creep, to say like this, and that's why she's not here, guys. So don't judge me because of it. Moving over to Undead. One of my favorite epic champions as well. I love him for arena, not only for clan boss as well. But that is Seeker, guys. Super unique. Makes my team go on a 2-to-1 ratio without having insane speed requirements. And it gives me attack up as well. And that's his A2 on a 3-turn cooldown, fully booked. Fills the turn meter of all allies by 30%, places a 50% increased attack buff on all allies for 2 turns, grants an extra turn. Again, similar with Armstrong. Now, he cannot be replaced by Doomscreech. He cannot be replaced by Apothecary. He cannot be replaced by other champions because he grants an extra turn. So, a lot of you guys ask me that all the time on videos. Can I replace Seeker in this team with Doomscreech, with Apothecary? Unfortunately, you cannot, guys. It's not about the turn meter increase only. It's about that extra turn. Then we have the passive. Heals this champion by 20% HP and places a 60% increased defense buff on all allies for 2 turns when hit with a critical hit. That's on a 5-turn cooldown, so time to time you'll be getting defense up from him on Clan Boss 2. If you're running a defense-based champion to deal damage. He's well known for the Barrier team. And pretty much that's it. Barrier and the other one, sorry, how you call it? The one without the Manitors. With the Roshkar, with Sir Nicholas. I forgot the name of that particular team, guys. But Batman Forever. That's how it's called, actually, sorry. Good base stats. Good speed as well. A1 attacks one enemy 2 times. Nothing too crazy for Clan Boss here, but this skill right here is the cherry on top of the cake. The next champion we have on the list is A-Next, guys. Attack champion, Spirit Affinity again. Oh my god, how many Spirit champions we actually have. I literally just realized how many Spirit champions we have when we're talking about the epics. It's crazy. So, A-Next, guys, he's a pretty good champion for unkillable, right? Attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 35% chance of placing a 60% decreased defense. So we got defense down from his A1. On the A2, attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 100% chance fully booked of placing decreased accuracy and a 5% poison debuff for 3 turns. So that's on a 3-turn cooldown as well. We're getting poisons. Pretty good overall. Then the A3 attacks one enemy, has a 100% chance of placing a weakened debuff for 2 turns, heals this champion by 50% of the damage inflicted. That's on a 3-turn cooldown. Now, he's not necessarily only good for unkillable. I beg your pardon for what I said before. His passive right here places a 60% increased defense buff on this champion for 2 turns when their HP drops below 75%. But that's on a 5-turn cooldown. Then places a 50% increased attack buff on this champion for 2 turns when their HP drops below 50. So you kind of want to have his HP drop below 50 to get that increased attack. The only problem is grants an extra turn when this champion's HP drops below 10%. So that can kind of screw over a bit your rotations on your champions because of the turn meter and things like that. But you can make him run on every single team, so that's not necessarily a problem. Base stats, not insane amount of defense. Pretty similar with the Occult Brawler and the rest. Good amount of attack, he can hit pretty hard as well. He has good multipliers and decent amount of HP. So A-Next right here is definitely a good epic champion for Clan Boss. Moving over to the next faction, guys. In the Dark Elves as well, we don't really have a champion that stands out to me for Clan Boss, right? We do have some champions, some niche champions might be good in some particular teams, but nothing honestly that stands out. Moving over to the Night Revenants, we do have, of course, very good champions for Clan Boss here. But the first one we're gonna talk about, guys, is Doom Priest. She's so amazing, honestly. The passive is what makes her so good. She has amazing base stats as well. Not the highest defense, but good speed, good HP. And the passive heals all allies by 7.5% of their HP and removes 1 random debuff from them at the start of this champion's turn. Not only for unkillable teams, but she's good for normal teams as well. Remove the decreased speed debuff, remove the stun if you make her go first on the turns. So overall, she's amazing. Then we have increased attack buff on all allies for 2 turns on the A2. And here, places a 15% increased crit rate buff on a random ally for 2 turns. Then increases force ally speed in all battles by 15%. Is a bit harder to make it work if you want to use her aura for Clan Boss as well and calculate the speeds like that on your force champions. Is not impossible, it's just a bit harder for you to calculate it all and bring it up in line, but it's is more than doable. So Doom Priest, amazing champion. She's been used in Clan Boss for ages and she's still rocking it at the moment. Not to say how much she's skyrocketed now for the Doom Tower, for the new bosses. Moving over to the next one. In my opinion, and in my opinion only, she is probably the second best epic champion for Clan Boss in the entire game. Why? Because she has so many things in her kit and she has a very unique passive. Super good base stats. She's a defense based champion, force affinity, 1.3k defense, decent amount of speed right here. We have the A1, attacks one enemy, has a 60% chance of placing a decreased attack debuff for 2 turns, making her a very popular champion for attack down. But then we have the A2 on a 4-turn cooldown fully booked, places a 60% increased defense buff and a block debuffs buff on all allies for 2 turns. So you have increased defense, you have block debuffs for 2 turns. If you want to make her go on a 4-to-3 ratio, you are covered for the stun all the time. You can be covered for the second AoE as well. So you're going proof affinity, basically you're going against the spirit affinity without a problem, and you are able to cover the stun as well. The passive has a 50% chance fully booked of completely blocking incoming damage when an ally is attacked. Occurs once per turn, will only block damage for the targeted ally if multiple allies are attacked at the same time. So basically for the stuns, it can come in play a lot. It can come in play on every AoE as well to save one ally. Now, it's not guaranteed it's gonna go on the ally with the lowest HP, but I think it kind of follows from the lead and positioning 1, 2, 3, 4. I think that's how it works. And the aura increases ally defense in all battles by 25%. How I said, I am running her on some teams. She's just amazing overall. Great champion, honestly. Moving over to the next faction, guys, because that's kind of the top champions from there. We have the dwarves. We have a couple of very good champions here for Clan Boss as well. Starting with Grizzled Jarl. Again, very unique champion in a way or another for an epic champion. Good base stats, good defense, decent amount of speed. The A1 attacks one enemy, places 100% heal reduction debuff for 2 turns. Now, I wish this debuff would not be landed on Clan Boss because we don't need it. The Clan Boss does not get affected by it. If we cannot land decreased speed, we cannot land the stun on him, why we should be able to land the debuff that just doesn't make anything on the Clan Boss, right? So I wish they would fix this, but they don't want to do it because they know that we're going to try to use different champions. The A2 on a 3-turn cooldown places a block debuffs buff on all allies for 1 turn, places a 60% increased defense buff on all allies for 2 turns. Have defense up for 2 turns and have block debuffs. Either you make him proof affinity for a spirit, either you make it for the stun. So you have block debuffs, you don't have to worry about bringing in a cleanser. Now, if he wouldn't have the A1 like that, and this would be on a 3-turn cooldown, he would be reliable for attack down. Attacks all enemies, has a 100% chance to land a decreased attack debuff on all enemies for 2 turns. That's kind of what matters from him on a Clan Boss. If this would be on a 3-turn cooldown, yeah, I would try and risk it to go just with him for attack down. But unfortunately, we cannot rely on him for attack down, only for his A2. And this is just more of a extra measure in case if our other champion that lands attack down gets resisted, right? Now, moving over to the next champion from this faction is Rear Guard Sergeant. I really like the champion. She has a lot of stuff in her kit. She's definitely one of the top epic champions for Clan Boss here. Defense-based champion, force affinity. I do apologize if I forget to mention this on some of the champions, the affinity and things like that. We have the A1, attacks one enemy, has a 50% chance of placing defense down for 2 turns. Very good, right? More damage. Then, on a 3-turn cooldown from the A2, attacks all enemies, has a 75% chance of placing a decreased attack debuff for 2 turns, heals this champion by 25% of the damage inflicted. Again, I would not rely on her for attack down because it's only a 75% chance. That can actually create us a lot of problems, but I would have her as a second second option there in case if my first one gets resisted. Now, the A3 on a 3-turn cooldown fully booked places a 50% ally protection buff and a 15% continuous heal buff on all allies except this champion for 2 turns. Ally protection super huge for high defense teams on clan boss. Continuous heal as well, it helps us to get a bit of extra healing on the team. Base stats pretty good as well, 1.2k defense, 18k HP, 97 speed, decent. Damage based on defense, of course. She hits fairly decent. Grizzle Gel hits much harder actually. And the last champion we have on this list, guys, from the Shadow King, newest champion is Toragi the Frog. Now, he doesn't have a huge base defense, but his kit overall is pretty good. HP based champion, magic affinity, damage based on HP, attacks one enemy, has a 40% chance of placing a 50% decrease attack debuff for 2 turns. The A2 attacks all enemies, has a 50% chance to land a provoke. This doesn't really help us for the clan boss. Not at all actually. But then the A3 on a 3-turn cooldown places a shield buff equal to 15% of this champion's max HP and a 50% ally protection buff on all allies except this champion for 2 turns. Also heals this champion by 25% of their max HP and places a 30% reflect damage buff on them for 3 turns. The heal increases by 2.5 for each poison debuff on the enemy team. Ally protection and a bit of shield as well. How I said, ally protection is huge. Now, because his base defense is so low, you don't really want to build high HP champions for clan boss because are not so effective as a defense-based champions. He's gonna die pretty quick with the ally protection, so I would probably suggest you definitely run a double ally protection with him. That's gonna keep your team a bit alive for longer, like a rear guard sergeant, for example. Paired with him is definitely gonna make a better result. The aura, when attacked, has a 50% chance of placing a 5% poison debuff on the attacker for 2 turns. Occurs once per hit, definitely much better for a non-void affinity when the clan boss actually hits us for 4 times instead of 3. And if you don't have him as a stun target, of course, it's gonna be hit for less on void affinity. But overall, is a pretty good epic champion. Now, we are done with the top 20, but it's actually a top 21 with Maneater. Because he's the number 1, I feel like he needed to be on top of everybody. Do let me know if I missed anyone, guys. Hopefully, it did help to clarify a bit how to use some of these champions, in what teams they work the best. If you did enjoy the video, don't forget to thumbs up, subscribe for more content, turn on notifications to see when we upload next, and I'll see you all soon on another video. Till then, peace out.